Sue Smith, Alex Scott, Jill Scott, Lyon Sanderson, Farrah Williams. I see you and your generation as the pioneers of women's football, not only in England, but worldwide.
Oh.
How does it feel to see a women's football growing so quickly and gaining opportunities that simply didn't exist during your active career?
Oh, it's amazing. I think, you know, from when I first started playing to nowadays, it's changed so much. The opportunities have changed, the standard has changed, and I think that's because of the opportunities that now, you know, young girls can play football from a young age, whether that's in schools or whether that's in local clubs. And yeah, you just see, you know, the amount of fans that are coming to watch. You can see the amount of coverage on TV, and you're now seeing these players as the household names, aren't they? Everybody knows who these players are, and that's key, I think, for those young girls coming through and wanting to, you know, not just play at the top level, but just play football at any level at all. So yeah, it's great. I'm delighted that the game's got to where it's got to.
Exactly, like girls. Today they don't have to play with boys. They can, but they don't have to.
Yeah,
it's a great opportunity, and they know players like Leah Williamson or Lucy Bronze, Alessia Russo. They are role models now to thousands of little girls, not only in England. Did you miss it when you were growing up to have some role models? I guess you have like role models in like male players, but to have the representation in female players, it's super important.
Oh, super important. I think to be able to see those players and sort of aspire to be like them. And like you say, there's so many now. And, you know, the young girls, like when you go into schools now, you speak to the classes, the young boys and the young girls, and, you know, they know the female players just as much as they know the male players. And that is so important. And they can, like say, just, you know, aspire to be like them. Whereas when I was growing up, I didn't see female football. You know, I knew that there was a women's league, but I didn't know too much about it, didn't know too much about the players. So my role models in football were male players. So yeah, it's brilliant now that these players, you know, not only have achieved on the pitch, because obviously they've been so successful, haven't they, winning the Euros the last couple of times, and obviously doing really well in the World Cup, but it's what they do like outside, which I think is key. You know, the way that they use their, you know, I suppose like standing in the game for good, don't they? So that, you know, as soon as they won the Euros, they were like, right, how can we help the women's game? How can we grow it? How can we make it better? So, you know, not only are they brilliant footballers, but they're brilliant people as well. So I think that's key.
I'm so glad that you mentioned it, because I really like how their story is like out of pitch. For example, Leah Williamson, not only she is like England's captain, great role model. If I had a daughter, I would be so blessed if like Leah Williamson was her role model. Yeah. Not only she's a great defender, of course, like England's captain, but she also publicly speak about the women's health, about the endometriosis, and it's so important.
It is, and it's anything that they feel sort of passionate about, they'll come out and they'll talk about it, and like you say, it just helps, doesn't it? I know Lucy Bronze has spoke as well recently, hasn't she? And you know, the different players, whatever their, like say their passion is or whatever they feel strongly about, they come out and they speak about it, and that will help young girls and boys as well, you know, growing up and, you know, going, okay, these players have gone through that. Like, you know, I remember in my team, you know, lots of us probably had to go through different things, but probably our message wouldn't be as loud as what their message is, because it wasn't as, you know, the game wasn't as big then, there wasn't as many people watching the game. So I think the fact that they come out and speak about things hugely helps a lot of people.
Yeah, did you feel that you and your then teammates are the role models because you were the first generation of really visible female football players?
Yeah, and I think it's nice, you know, sometimes it's nice, you know, when you hear some of the interviews. I remember listening to an interview with Rachel Daly, and she said, oh yeah, Sue Smith was my hero growing up, and I was like, oh, that's really nice. Made me feel really old, but it was actually really nice that, because she was, you know, she played for Leeds and I played for Leeds, so she used to come and watch me play. And so it was actually nice to know that, you know, you've inspired some youngsters to go through and not only just play football, but to actually go and represent your country like Rach is doing, and still, you know, still playing at the highest level now. So yeah, it's nice to know that you've played some sort of part in where women's football is today.
Yeah, same with Leah Williamson and Alex Scott, because Leah, when she was like 9 years old, she saw Alex score the winning goal in the Champions League. Okay. And like 18 years ago, like Leah won the Champions League with Arsenal.
Amazing.
It's like,
it's amazing.
It's great.
It is.
Like, I have recently spoke to Lynn Sanderson, and she told me that when you played the final of Euro in 2009,
Yeah.
you were still not fully professional as the Lionesses in the national team of England.
Yeah.
If I compare it with the last Euro we had last summer in 2025, I can imagine that
Yeah.
the players there are not fully professional.
No, it's bizarre. And
Yeah.
you know, when you look back to that we actually got to the final and like you say, we weren't professional. We still had players that were, you know, working full time. A lot of them, or some of them, had to drop to, you know, to maybe part time. I was lucky that I was at university, so I was okay. You know, I was sort of like, I got paid a little bit through my club and I got paid through you know, through England, but not to any level that we could just completely, you know, be a full-time professional. But there was a lot of girls that were having to combine the two, so combine their work and their studies with playing to, you know, to that level. So yeah, that was difficult, and I think you just learned to live with it, because that was what we used to do. I remember, you know, doing my studies, and I'd go into university and I'd go in, say, an hour earlier so that I could do, you know, my training. Then I'd go and do the lectures, and then I'd do a bit of training afterwards and go home. So, but that's just what we did. We just had to fit it in around. I even remember playing for Lincoln, and that was at the start of the WSL. So, you know, everybody pretty much should have been full time, but we had like a mixed approach. So some of us were full time. I was lucky that I was full time, but I remember we had a teacher, we had a firefighter, we had somebody that worked on the railway. You know, the firefighter, for example, would be working nights on a Saturday, and then she'd be in goal on the Sunday, and it'd be live on the TV.
Crazy.
I know, and
That's crazy.
honestly, and you'd hear people criticising her and saying, "I can't believe she didn't save that," and I'd be like, "She's been working all night," and you know, no wonder. So I'm so glad that that's changed. You know, that's like their stories that, you know, thank goodness that's moved on, and now players are full time and they can just focus on their football, and that's why the standards improved as well.
Yeah. So like this still happens, not in England, but in the rest of the Europe, when the women's football is still minor.
Yeah, of course,
it still happens. But you see the growth now.
Yeah.
How do you look back on the Euro in 2009, because you achieved a remarkable, you made it to the final?
Yeah.
Do you feel that tournament helped push women's football in England forward?
I think so, and I think we felt a little bit of pressure as well, because, you know, the game was sort of growing. It was teetering on being, you know, I suppose, well, more popular and becoming that real professional game. We knew that the WSL was hoping to come in, and, you know, the league was going to be better and bigger, and we were going to get more fans, and there's going to be more TV coverage. So we sort of put a bit of pressure on ourselves. We have to be successful in this tournament, because by being successful and getting to a final, more people will watch it. And so, yeah, we got to the final. Unfortunately, we got beat by Germany, but I do think that maybe was a turning point, because I think a lot of people then started to take a bit more notice of it, and, you know, there was probably more interest in the team, and wanted to know, you know, a little bit more about us. Because I remember we had, you know, newspaper articles where, like, my mum had saved all the newspaper articles, bless her, and they were all like, you know, like what we were doing. So, you know, Sue was a student, and, you know, Leanne Sanderson was, I think she was probably a student at the time, wasn't she? Similar age to me. And then it had all like little bits of information about us. So it was trying to get to know us a little bit more. But yeah, I think probably started to change then in 2009.
Yeah, when you compare the beginning of your career and the moment when you retired from professional football, did you feel that the women's football is changing during your active career?
Oh, massive, yeah. So I think from, you know, I was quite lucky that I went from completely amateur, where you paid to play, to semi-professional, where you had to combine your work or your studies with, you know, with playing, to then full-time professional. So when I finished, I was, you know, full-time training every day, and absolutely loving it. So yeah, I think I was lucky that I've seen all of those stages, and how the game had just gone from, you know, I don't want to say bottom end, but, you know, a low end level to a game that actually could keep progressing, which it has done.
Yeah. We held this interview in 2026. The Lionesses are 2 times European champions.
Yeah.
It's like a few weeks ago they ended their last match on the 2005 on the maybe not sold out Wembley, but there were like 75,000 people, which is a lot.
Yeah.
When you were playing, could you ever imagine women's football look like this?
Not at all. No, I remember going to the Euros final the first time, and I remember sort of sat at Wembley, and I got really emotional, like, you know, that we stood up and the national anthem was on and it was a full stadium. And I remember looking around and there was other ex-players were there and there were other people that had really been involved in promoting and developing the women's game. And we just all looked at each other and we were just like, wow, this is unreal. And then for them to go and win it was just, you know, another level. But that just sort of emotion that we've got packed out Wembley, everybody's singing the national anthem, everybody's here to come and watch women's football. They've all got names on their back of women's players. And that's just what we wanted, you know, and it was great to see. So yeah, it was. I think it was quite emotional for a lot of us. And then they went and did it again. So they're doing well, aren't they? But no, I never thought it probably would get to that. It was funny because I went back to Southend United, and apparently we played there sort of 15 years ago, and I think there was something like 7,000 people watching us. We played Iceland in a game there, and I thought, so from going from playing at Southend United with 7,000 people to like playing at Wembley in front of a packed out, it's unreal, isn't it? The difference is great.
Yeah, it's the pinch me moment.
I
would say exactly.
Definitely. Yeah.
But when we switch to club football, you are an Everton fan, right?
Yeah, I am, for my sins.
And Everton, alongside Arsenal, my club, were among the clubs that led their women's team to play on the big stadium, which is still, even in England, it's still not that usual. Did you see this as important step in the growth of the women's football?
Yeah, I think it is. You know, I think there's a lot of clubs now that are maybe looking at, and this could be in the future, but having their own stadium. You know, I think that would be great. You're obviously self-sustainable then, and you know, the fans that come to the game, obviously then that's your income, you know, so that will help the club progress. So I think that's something that, you know, clubs are looking at, and maybe in time that will happen. I think with Everton playing at Goodison Park, it's brilliant for me. It's got a lot of history, and you know, I know there's been some fans that are just Everton fans and they've gone to watch the women's team because they're playing at Goodison Park, and they've gone, oh, actually this is really good, I enjoy this, so they go and watch the men and they go and watch the women. Similarly, when they, you know, the Arsenal girls play at the Emirates, what a stadium. It's just unreal, isn't it? So I think sometimes, you know, when you play at a big stadium and it's not full, it doesn't look as good. You know, I know that I went to watch, I think it was Leicester played at the men's ground, and there wasn't as many fans there. It doesn't look as good maybe on the TV. So that's the next step, isn't it? Trying to fill the grounds it's not just Leicester, it's every you know, team, certain games that you watch. But if you can get that full stadium week in, week out, it's certainly helped the game grow because of the financial implications.
Okay. Now we switch a topic, but not too much.
Okay.
Because after your retirement, you became a sports reporter. So we are basically colleagues. What is it like for you to watch the football from the other side now?
Do you know, it's probably the second best thing to play in. So I love playing. Obviously, that's, you know, that's what I've grown up doing. But I would say it's second best because I still feel involved in it. So when I retired, I was like, do I want to go into coaching and management, or do I want to go into like the media side? And, you know, obviously did my badges and things just in case I wanted to go into that side, but then got an opportunity with the media, and it's great. You know, I watch football, I analyse it. You know, I go to games, I go to, you know, meet brilliant people, interview brilliant people. So, yeah, I'm very fortunate that I feel still involved within football in a different capacity, but still within a, you know, capacity that I really enjoy.
Okay, so last question. When you look at the sold out Wembley, fully professional league and huge fan interest today, do you feel that women's football is finally where it should be, or is it just the beginning?
I honestly think it's just the beginning. You know, I think it's brilliant where it is now. I still think there's more to come. And I mentioned it earlier with fans. You know, if we can get fans every week in, week out for every club across the WSL 1 and 2, that will massively help. I think there's other probably things that you can do maybe at a youth level and a level underneath, you know, grassroots, where we can really help those teams develop and grow. So I think there's still a lot of things to come and still for women's football to be even bigger and better. But it's certainly a good place now. It's at a place that I think we all wanted it to see, and we get crowds for those big games and for international games. But yeah, every week, that's what I'd love to see. I think that's probably the next step. We're getting brilliant players coming into our league, you know, massive transfer fees, which again, I don't think we ever thought we were going to see. But then those sort of young English players at academies, maybe giving them opportunities. Could we have a B league? Could we have a development league where they bridge that gap between the academy and the first team? They then go and play in that, and then hopefully then progress into the WSL. So there's still things for the women's game to grow, but I'm certainly happy with where it is at the moment.
Okay, so thank you so much. It's been the greatest honor.
Oh, thank you so much.